Log Horizon, Volume. Chapter 5. Escape Audio Source, WuxaWorldAudiobook.com. Sarah was hiding in a composite room made of insulation materials. The 2LDK, two-bedroom, living room, dining room and kitchen, was situated inside an abandoned building. The civilization of the old world had been lost after the world fell apart, and you could only see the architectural relics of its culture scattered around the world. Sarah, as a player, knew this world was recreated in the image of modern Japan, with Sakino based on one of the cities of Sapporo. You could see hints of the real-world city everywhere. Sakino was an urbanized place in the world that had many big buildings. They have all been reinforced with cold steel as part of the Elder Tales setting, making them look more like fortresses. The angular design gave it a retro Machine Empire feel. This was the design motif of Hokkaido, or Ezo Empire settings in-game. The buildings, strengthened by screws, braces, nuts and bolts, were able to withstand the wind and snow, but not the cold. That's why the people of Sakino would construct additional insulation houses within the buildings, places that were warm and suitable to live in. This was highly inefficient if you took into account the population and the area available. It wouldn't work in Japan, but was possible in the world of Elder Tales. One of these insulation houses was the hiding place of Sarah, a rental from the person who helped her. She had been cleaning this home separated into rooms by screen doors all day. She didn't do it because she liked to clean or because the place was dirty. She just had nothing else to do. In this place with no TV or internet, it was hard to kill time. Sarah's subclass was housekeeper. This subclass had the ability to clean zones, arrange items, and manage consumables and storage items. These skills helped in keeping a place clean and tidy. Why did I pick such a minor, useless subclass? Sarah sighed for the countless time but did not stop cleaning. In Elder Tales, the main class was chosen when creating your character and could not be changed. However, if you were fine with giving up all your subclass EXP, you could change subclasses easily. Sarah's main class was Druid, a type of healer. Sarah wanted to experience the feeling of doing business in this complicated game. That's why she started playing. There were many players just like her. Interacting with other players and earning cash by doing business offered a unique sense of fun. It was one of the ways to enjoy Elder Tales. But most players who wanted to focus on business would choose Merchant or Accountant as a subclass. These subclasses would provide additional benefits when trading, allowing you to get discounts when dealing with NPCs. Another choice would be a production subclass. Crafting all sorts of items to sell was also a proper way to play. But according to the beginner's guide Sarah had read online, you need to have certain levels of stats and some quests cleared before you could choose Accountant or Merchant as a subclass. You would need to have some capital on hand to get raw materials if you chose to go the production subclass route. So Sarah was saving up money while raising the level of her Druid main class, and would repick her subclass after saving some money. Raising her main class would only help in buying or farming for items after all, so Sarah decided to choose the simplest subclass to use in the meantime with this thought in mind. Simply put, Sarah became a housekeeper through an elimination process. Boo-hoo. If I knew it would be like this, I should have chosen a crafting subclass such as artisan or tailor. Sarah's mind wandered as she cleaned the table. The composite room made from insulation parts had a country-style interior. It wasn't really a style, it was just that things were simply made from wood. The floor was laid with wood that had beautiful grain patterns, and the walls were built with logs while planks covered the ceiling. According to the game setting, Ezo Empire was a treasure trove of natural resources, leading the Japanese server with its forestry and Ming industries. The wooden floors and reddish tables were all unique products of Ezo Empire. They would shine if you cleaned them thoroughly. In the wood cabin-style composite house, the plain girl with her long hair tied in a bunch. Sarah was working hard. Her flannel shirt and denim pants, along with her long hair and face without makeup, gave the impression of cleanliness and tidiness. She was not utterly beautiful, but looked like a newlywed wife from afar. I'm so bored, I just keep leveling up. Sarah sighed as she opened the window. Her housekeeper EXP was increasing today too. The EXP for main class and subclass were independent. Subclasses were much simpler in design than main classes. You would level up if you accumulated 10 EXP, and the limit would either be level 90 or 100. Sarah's housekeeper level was 42 yesterday, but it was 44 now. Recently her subclass had been rising 3 levels every day, in incredible speed. She might max out her subclass while hiding in Sakino. I don't want to be an grinding levels. That would be so sad. She had been doing laundry and house chores the whole day. Of course her level would increase. But maybe she was not a maid but a housewife? This thought rose in Sarah's mind. This might be a fine title to have for a girl her age, but the feeling of embarrassment was more prominent. No way. No way. Maybe I am a maiden waiting for my kitty husband to come home. Sarah started polishing the tableware to hide her embarrassment. This way of killing time wouldn't trouble others and looked very peaceful from the side. Sarah-san, I'm home NYA. The door opened and an amazing man returned. This zone was an independent space with monthly rental fees, so only players authorized by the owner could enter. The man entering the house was a werecat. His slender figure and green corduroy jacket made him look like a middle-aged rifleman from drawing books. His long limbs accentuated his skinny figure. His round head had a pair of triangular ears on top like a mischievous cat from fairy tales. The whiskers on either side of his face made him look majestic and cute. He was Nyanta, a demi-human with cat features from the 8 races available for the players to choose werecats. Welcome back Nyana-san. Sarah bowed. How was the town? Nyana tilted his head slightly and gave a vague smile. His slit-like eyes made her feel at ease, but Sarah was unable to see other minute changes in his expression. Same as always. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. Sarah's expression sank at his words. Nyana said it wasn't bad, but since it hadn't improved, it meant the situation was still atrocious. Sakino's security continued to deteriorate. With the small population, they could not maintain order spontaneously and it was becoming a dog-eat-dog world. The main reason for this development was the Guild Brigandia, a congregation of notorious people expelled from Akiba and Nakasu. It had a nasty reputation since the Elder Tales days. Prioritizing profits, their aggressive style turned them into a real group of bandits after the apocalypse. PK was normal for them, and they might not be satisfied with half the items they got from their victims. They would use intimidation and harassment to extort more money from other players. They were nasty to both players and NPCs. For many reasons, there was no point for players to mistreat NPCs. Take the city guards for instance. Their battle prowess and levels were high and they could fend off normal players with ease. The NPCs in the field zones like merchant caravans, farmers, and citizens which provided information for the players had low fighting strength but no wealth to speak of. These NPCs would also provide crucial hints for quests so normal players wouldn't attack them. But this group had no qualms bullying the NPCs and ignored the fact that the NPCs had nothing valuable on them. They treated the NPCs as merchandise and started trading them as slaves. Players were able to employ NPCs in the world of Elder Tales. They were hired for various reasons, but the most common would be to take care of player residences. In Elder Tales, where you could purchase a home, talents that managed and cleaned your place had a fixed demand in the market. Be it renting or buying a zone, the monthly maintenance fee would go up if you didn't clean your place periodically. Some NPCs with special abilities might not be able to fight on the battlefield, but could serve well in activities such as guild events. It was common to employ NPCs One of the reasons Sarah's housekeeper subclass was unpopular was due to the job being outsourced to NPCs. If you hired an NPC maid, you could keep a small mansion clean by only paying 800 gold a month. It was understandable for the housekeeper subclass to lose popularity. Elder Tales was just a well-made online RPG. Only a select few NPCs like maids, harvesters, and assistants had unique skills to help the players. You could not employ other normal NPCs. Their appearances used the same base models as players, but their communication ability was limited to simple computer artificial intelligence. They could say predetermined lines or converse with you through a few select options. They were simply not worth the effort to attack. But all sorts of common sense was overturned after the apocalypse. The game became reality, daily life became a nightmare. There were many obvious changes after the apocalypse, with the biggest being the changes of the NPCs. They had an actual soul and body in this world. Their conversational skills and actions were no different from players. Unless they had special settings, their battle prowess were miles behind players. But if you didn't confirm through the status screen, it was hard to tell players and NPCs apart. Another major difference was the number of NPCs. NPCs were more human-like with an increase in population. The evil guild Brigandia treated these two facts as ripe fruits to be harvested. The act of selling people as a tool of entertainment started in this world. This was not a profitable business model in Tsukino with only 2,000 people. It was just an action that mocked the economy instead of making money. Even the low-class act of capturing NPCs for sale was just a way to kill time. Just like the evolution of other foolish ideas, these actions gradually got out of hand. They shifted their focus from tormenting and oppressing people from NPCs to female players like Sarah. Sarah turned pale as she thought about this. Her vision dimmed as though a veil was covering her head and her temperature dropped. If the man in front of her had not come to her rescue, she would definitely be in deep trouble. Now, don't think so hard about it, Sarah-san. If you let it bother you, you'll turn old easily. Nya. Nyanta waved his hand in front of Sarah as he spoke. Don't think too much about it, eat some fruits. Nya. Here, eat this. Sarah nodded as Nyanta offered her an apple. The fragrance from the red fruit made Sarah relax. This house is so clean. I'm sure Sarah-san will make a great wife someday. Nya. That isn't true. Really? Nyanta sat on a chair by the ding table and commented casually. His words made Sarah's temperature rise. Nyanta referred to himself as an old man. From the feeling of his voice, Nyanta was much older than Sarah. Sarah, who was in her second year of high school, would not have been surprised if Nyanta was twice her age. But even so, Sarah didn't think Nyanta was as old as he said. Sarah shared this thought with him once and Nyanta replied that the credit should be given to the well-designed characters in the game. But Sarah didn't think so. Nyanta-san must surely be a handsome middle-aged gentleman. Cool, wise, mature and cheerful. Even if this was a game with amazing character designs, Sarah felt that appearance didn't really matter when they were playing together. And after the apocalypse, Sarah was very certain of Nyanta's character, since they were living under the same roof due to emergency situations. Nyanta gave off the feeling of a dependable and mature man. He wasn't intimidating and Sarah felt a sense of security when she was with him. His silver triangular ears were charming like a noble cat. His slender figure was so cool. Nyanta-san is so in shape, I look kinda fat being next to him. I am a little overweight. Objectively speaking, Sarah had a normal build for a woman. But such stunted thoughts formed when she looked at Nyanta. Nyanta has muscles all over his body, but it felt like he was made from pencils. How are those people who are coming for you doing? Nya. Nyanta arranged the items he purchased on the ding table and asked. Crescent Moon Alliance, the guild Sarah belonged to, had already sent a 3-man team from Akiba to Tsukino for her. Sarah and Yana both knew about this and it was their common topic of conversation. Yana was impressed by the movement speed of this team. Although they couldn't contact the team directly, Crescent Moon Alliance's guild master Marielle would contact Sarah several times daily, so Sarah knew their approximate position. Yes, they are doing fine. They'll probably arrive before noon tomorrow, Sarah reported. She wouldn't be able to stay here anymore when help arrived and would have to go back to Akiba. What plans did Nyanta have? Sarah was afraid to ask. Nyanta only aided her out of kindness, so Sarah wasn't sure how much she could ask of him. She was unable to repay him for all that he had done. But whenever Sarah brought this up, he would dismiss it with a laugh, saying, "Helping the young ones is the obligation and joy of the elderly." Even though I am happy he said that. He only treats me like a child after all. Please bear with this a little while longer. NYA. Sarah-san must feel uncomfortable being confined in such a small house, so just endure it a bit more. Relax, help is definitely coming. Nyata's smile made Sarah miss her chance to ask again. Another day passed. Shiro's group had set up their base dozens of minutes away from Tsukino for surveillance as scheduled. Tsukino was a city zone located in Ezo Empire. Ezo Empire was equivalent to Sapporo in the Old World and was set as a field zone. It was a fortress city with farming zones, and many NPCs resided here. To be safe, Shiro found an inconspicuous collapsed house in the suburbs to use as their base with a view observing the entrance into Tsukino. There is no need to be on guard right now, my lord. But there is a fishy atmosphere. This place is lifeless. Shiro nodded in agreement with both their assessments and took out a piece of paper from his pocket. It was a rough sketch of Tsukino. Tsukino has one major road, something like this. The uptown area is in the east, the central square is to the east of this place. As for us, Shiro drew an arrow. We're going in from the west. Can't we meet up outside the city? That's a bad idea, Shrimp. Is that so, Pervert Naotsugu? They each refused to back down, calling each other Shrimp and Pervert. Shiro only soothed them this one time as he explained. Our respawn point is in Akiba since that is the last city we visited. If we met up outside and were wiped out in a fight, we would respawn in the Akiba Cathedral after some time. But Sarah-san would respawn at the Tsukino Cathedral. So if we meet up outside and get wiped out, we will return to Akiba while Sarah-san would stay at Tsukino. We will need to start all over, which I want to avoid. I understand. Akatsuki nodded while Naotsugu had a smug "I told you so" look on his face. Next up is our formation. Akatsuki, I would like you to hide yourself with sneak and silent move, please. No, please, my lord. I understand. Naotsugu and I, with Akatsuki who is hiding her presence, will enter the city normally and head to the meeting point, an abandoned building. Akatsuki will find a hiding place with a vantage point covering the whole building. Contact me if you see anything. The serious girl with black hair nodded with a serious expression. Naotsugu will guard the entrance. Try to find a spot that overlooks both the road and the interior of the building. Wait there and be prepared for any emergencies inside. I will go straight into the building, meet up with Sarah-san, and escort her out to Naotsugu as fast as possible. Okay. What about the third party who helped? I have not ascertained his identity yet, but I hope he will leave Tsukino with us. We will leave his decision to go to Akiba until later. Shiro thought for a moment before continuing. It is highly possible Sarah-san is on the friend list of a Brigandia Guild member. Unlike what its name suggested, you did not need approval before adding someone to your friend list. You could determine whether a person on your friend list was online, and you could also check to see if they were in the same zone as you. If that is the case, they'll locate her and send pursuit the minute she leaves her hiding spot. The best case will be to leave Tsukino before that happens. They probably won't find us if we are 2 or 3 zones away. Sarah was currently hiding in an independent zone of a building. Put simply, Sarah wouldn't be detected by people who added her to their friend list if she was hidden there. But if she left and went into the Sakino City Zone, they would notice her presence. The group would need to go through the Sakino City Zone in order to return to Akiba. Shiro had already planned for this on his journey here and explained it in detail to the others. His meticulous formation was playing it safe, but Shiro didn't think anything would actually go wrong. But everything depended on how unscrupulous the problem guilds really were. Unlike handling monsters, you couldn't simply attempt the quest again after getting wiped out. There are tons of bad scenarios. This is the reason people say I think too much and I am an introvert. It wouldn't be a problem if his worries turned out to be for nothing. Shiro nodded at Naotsugu and Akatsuki as he thought about this. If we are fast, we can say goodbye to Sakino in an hour. I support my lord's battle plans. After tying down the hand signals for actions and the meeting points in case of emergencies, the trio headed for Sakino. The entrance was designed to look like a reinforced castle gate. Angular braces were bolted to the gate at all angles, giving it an intimidating look. The young Ezo Empire was built by the human Emperor Al-Radiru. In the settings of the Japanese server, it was a strong and warlike nation. Weapons were hung all over the cities and the colorful standards gave off a military atmosphere. This is different from Akiba. I visited when it was a game, but seeing it like this is totally different from what I remember. The decor, atmosphere, and details of the city that were only the background in the game was a new experience for Shiro right now. Naotsugu felt the same as he looked around with interest while wrapped in his thick woolen cloak. The long road led into the city zone. The NPCs walking in the streets were lifeless and the occasional players they saw had gloomy expressions. The atmosphere is terrible, I wouldn't want to live here. Yeah, Naotsugu whispered and Shiro replied in the same low volume. He sympathized with them, but the feeling of frustration in his heart burned stronger. He had felt this sensation during his journey here, but he was losing control of it right now. He felt irritated and his temperature rose with his unhappy feelings. Although he wanted to do something to improve the situation, he didn't have any practical means or the ability. The wary Shiro looked behind himself every now and then, but he couldn't feel Akatsuki's presence or location. She must have been nearby, but for her to have erased her presence so completely made Shiro feel uneasy. After traveling a distance, he saw an abandoned building with a broken sign saying, Rauke Boat, the landmark building Marielle had mentioned. Shiro signaled with his hand and entered the building with Naotsugu. There were steel braces reinforcing the cracks in the concrete walls everywhere. The buildings here looked more structurally sound than Akiba's. Naotsugu turned right just after entering the lobby and found a security guard post. Shiro listened intently for any sound as he moved deeper into the building, up the stairs to the second floor. After contacting Marielle by telepathy, Shiro was told, our guild member will be reaching you soon. Things had been going as planned so far, which put Shiro at ease. It had been 6 minutes since he entered Sakino. Shiro turned around casually when he heard 2 sets of footsteps approaching. A young girl wearing leather armor with a rounded silhouette unique to healers greeted him. She had long hair tied back in a low ponytail and looked up at Shiro with guilty eyes. This, along with her panicky demeanor, reminded Shiro of a small animal poking its head out of the forest. Hello. Shiro smiled. I am Sarah from Crescent Moon Alliance, thank you for coming. NYA. Wait, is that you, Chief? Even though it was rude to Sarah who was bowing her head in thanks, Shiro couldn't help retorting loudly. Hey, I was thinking who it might be, isn't this Shirokai NYA? That explains how you arrived so quickly NYA. This was the man known as Chief or Cat Sage in the Debauchery Tea Party, the swashbuckler with cat ears. Nyanta was a player that gave off a unique air during his days in the Debauchery Tea Party. He was steady, cool, and had a kind nature. He could also be described as a sunbathing cat. Anyway, he was the one rare sensible person restraining the playful group that tended to go out of control. Nyana referred to himself as an old man and behaved like one with his steadfast maturity. With voice chat being the main way of communicating in Elder Tales, it was possible to guess someone's age through their voice. The self-proclaimed old man Nyana sounded younger than 50, should be a bit older than 40, and was 30+ years of age at best. Online gaming was a culture of the young. There was no surprise in finding players older than 30, but you would be hard-pressed to see any over 40. Nyanta probably called himself an old man because of this relative difference in age, which differed from how Shiro saw it. In this case, an adult had nothing to do with biological age. Others thought of Nyanta as an adult because of his character and experience. Adult, in this case, didn't mean someone who couldn't read the atmosphere and disrupted everybody's playing time. It referred to a person who always had your back and gave you advice when you consulted them. Nyana would help any comrade that came to him for advice, but he would not overdo it with his aid. They would pull themselves together after hearing his warm voice and work hard on their problem. This was the reason Nyanta was loved and respected by the younger players. His nicknames of Chief and Cat Sage were expressions of goodwill by the other players. The Debauchery Tea Party was not a guild, it was just a group of players. Many players there were not in any guild, but some belonged to one. However, big guilds with strict rules frowned on their members being on such close terms with outsiders. This was not because of discrimination, although it could be, it was just concern about manpower flowing out. For instance, rather than letting the high-level members mentor beginners without guilds or from other guilds, it would be better to teach the beginners in your own guild. Guilds were meant for mutual support after all. Taking this into perspective, Debauchery Tea Party regulars were either from small guilds or not in one. Nyanta belonged to the guild Cat Food, but Shiro had never seen any other players from Cat Food, so it must have been an obscure mini-guild. Whenever Shiro asked Nyana how his guild was doing, Nyana replied, "I love sitting on the porch, but the house was getting old." Something like that, NYA, with a smile. Although Nyanta was the advisor for the Debauchery Tea Party, he was not a man with high authority or status. Shiro could sense that Nyana was concerned about how the trend of the Tea Party would affect him. Nyana maintained a calm and playful demeanor, but he definitely liked the festive events of the Debauchery Tea Party, right? He probably wanted to enjoy himself among the young ones. That's how Shiro felt. "Ah, sorry about that, Sarah-san. Please call me Shiro. I actually know this sage." "That's right, Sarah-san. This is Shiro Kai, a smart and competent young man, NYA. The plan is sure to work with him here, NYA. I see you still meow all the time, Chief." Shiro gave a teasing smile. Making fun of Nyata's meowing had been a joy of Shiro since the Tea Party days. "What are you talking about, Shiro Kai, NYA? This is the correct way for cat people to speak, a wonderful way to end a sentence, NYA. Is it one, or NYA? Just stick to one, okay?" The lighthearted chat between Shiro and Nyana surprised Sarah. She calmed herself and asked, "You know each other?" "We were very close, NYA. Shiro Kai used to check me for fleas." "I did not." Sarah could only nod with a stunned expression. "Since Shiro Kai is here, who are the other two, NYA?" "Neotsugu is here. The other is a girl named Akatsuki, a level 90 assassin. We have gone through 10 days and 160 training sessions. She is good." "Then Neotsugu CCHI is here too, NYA, and a new friend." "This is excellent, NYA. Shiro Kai is finally at this phase, NYA." Nyanta, who always squinted his eyes into a slit while smiling, looked at Shiro with a deep smile. "Chief Nyana, what happened to Cat Food?" "The house couldn't handle the bad weather and half the house caved in, NYA. Perhaps it is as a sign from above telling me to relocate to Akiba, NYA." "That? Hey, wait a minute. Niata's answer sounded more grandiose than sad. Just when Shiro was about to ask further, a soothing ringtone sounded in his ears. A menacing group led by a monk is approaching the building. They have 3 weapon-based classes and 2 healers probably in the same party. They are planning to surround you. They will reach you in about 2 minutes. The concise words brought up the sketch of Sakino in Shiro's mind. Our allies detected a party of 6 led by a monk approaching. Any idea who they are? That should be the guild master of Brigandia, Demika's NYA. He is a level 90 monk, so are his teammates NYA. He is the mastermind behind all this, the enemy NYA. Nyana used the term enemy clearly. He had never addressed any player this way in the game before, which cleared up any doubts Shiro had. Is there a back door here? We will fight our way through if there's a need. This way NYA. You doing okay, Sarah-san? Of course. Sarah chased after Nyana, who is leading the way, with the rescue team member Shiro behind her. So he is Nyana-san's friend. He looks hard to get along with but seems very smart. Sarah judged based on Shiro's sharp eyes. Peeking behind, she could see Shiro watching the vicinity while talking through telepathy. His feet were steady and fast, definitely experienced in this. Brigandia members had started combing through the areas they found suspicious. They'd probably found her whereabouts through the friend list. That's what Sarah concluded. It would only be a matter of time before they were found. The layout of Sakino was very simple. All the roads were laid out in a grid like a chessboard. No matter what route they took, they would be surrounded if the enemy had sufficient numbers. Shiro and Nyanta decided to force their way through even though they knew this. They said this was a necessary gamble to return to Akiba. Shiro was contacting Naotsugu and Akatsuki, who are not here. The 3 of them moved fast but steadily towards the main road that led west. The city gate was full of Brigandia members, as expected. Fighting is prohibited in the streets of Sakino NYA. What are they thinking? They will let us through the first time. Shiro mentioned the enemies would give way, but that was just this one time. They would wait until Shiro's group was outside and then attack. That was Brigandia's plan. Sarah was sure Shiro and Nyana understood this too. That's how it is NYA. Nyanta didn't ask Shiro further about his bad premonition out of concern for Sarah. But the kind attitude of Nyanta differed from his time with Sarah. She didn't know what was different, but it gave her the chills. What should I do? Sarah's voice was trembling. Demika's had grabbed her wrist once, and Sarah lost her courage just recalling his muscular arms and disgusting smile. About that, Shiro looked afraid, and you could see his expression fading from his profile. Shiro, who looked more unapproachable with his temperature seemingly dropping, scared Sarah. If they're letting us leave, then we just go. That makes things easier. Eh? Sarah stared in surprise at Shiro's words. Battle was allowed after leaving the city zone. There would be a fight if they were caught. Brigandia had enough members to guard all the roads out of the city. Nyana, Shiro, and she would be murdered, Sarah predicted. No matter how experienced Shiro and Nyanta were, or high level their allies might be, there were still only 5 of them. And that included Sarah, who was below level 30. Sarah felt there was no way they could win against their foes in PK. The difference in numbers was too large. To escape cleanly, we need to create an opening. They will pursue us indefinitely if we are in close range. They definitely know someone is assisting Sarah-san, or she wouldn't be able to get food all this time. They also know we are few in numbers. Brigandia probably plans to surround and PK us a short distance outside the non-combat city zone. Their priority probably will be the people helping you. That will destroy your will and put you under their control. I am almost certain of that. Shiro's pure analysis sounded like a bystander's viewpoint. They might kill us? How can you say that? Now, don't get so upset, Sarah-san. There's no need to be so worried NYA. If that's what Shirokai says, that's how it is. NYA. Just leave this to Shirokai and you will be fine, Nyana said calmly, ignoring Sarah's panic and unease. Nyana had already informed Shiro about the details of Brigandia's members and their strengths, but Sarah still didn't get why the two of them were so nonchalant in the face of imminent danger. Chief, what is it, NYA? If you went one-on-one with their leader? A foolish question, NYA. Nyanta nodded at Shiro's query, scaring Sarah with his spirit. She had heard from experienced players that PK was different from fighting monsters, and this was the same in the alternate world. Unlike the limited variety of attacks monsters used based on their instincts, there was no way to tell what other players might do. The tension of battle was several times stronger, and even the most battle-hardened players could make mistakes. That was what Henrietta told Sarah. Let's do it this way. We will leave the city, and Brigandia will try to PK us at a place where we can't flee into the city. We will defeat their leader and make our escape. What an absurd plan. Sarah turned pale. That's not a plan, it was just going with Brigandia's flow, right? This was a suicidal move in a sense. Sarah couldn't put her thoughts into words even though she wanted to. No problems, NYA. You are still the same Shirokai knew, NYA. More incredibly, Nyanta actually agreed with Shiro. Sarah turned around in surprise as Nyana opened his right eye while replying. It's been a while since my last hearty meal. Watch closely, Sarah-san, NYA. Don't worry, I won't let those ruffians touch you, NYA. Seeing Nyanta like this, Sarah swore in her heart to endure whatever fear she might face. That was how things had progressed to this stage. It was going just as Shiro predicted. Sarah's group walked through the gates under the disdainful look of Brigandia's members. About 10 of their people had cut off their retreat route, shadowing them from behind. They would be attacked a short distance from the city. Even Sarah, who usually had nothing to do with murderous intents, could feel the twisted air, unable to differentiate between malice and kindness. Her trembling shoulders were the best evidence. It must be hard for her to trust me. Shiro, who was aware of Sarah's worries, thought. She was right in a sense. Brigandia was a powerful force, so it was understandable for her to doubt the possibility of victory. The tension in the air got stronger with each step they took. As they got further away from the safety of the city, Brigandia's men started to close in and encircle Shiro's group. Here should be fine, Shiro said softly before he raised his voice and asked, which of you is Brigandia's Damicus? This statement caused a stir among the surrounding players. They had not expected such an open challenge. Now, Shirokai asking something so loudly is rude, NYA. I know which one he is the excessively huge guy standing over yonder, NYA. Hey, Damicus. The man who appeared as if on cue from Nyana was the guild master of Brigandia, Damicus. His light armor that looked like a chestplate covered his muscular body. He was equipped with weapons on his hands akin to tiger claws. Since he was based off the 3D in-game model, this man should be quite handsome. But his expression rightly reflected the evil in his heart. So you two are the flies that have been bothering Sarah. That would just be me, NYA. And it's not a fly but a cat, NYA. Nyana teased without a care in the world. Unlike the content of his speech, Nyana used a mature and charming tone, so it was not too intimidating. But he followed up with some spunk. Recklessness is the way of the young, and tolerance is the beauty of adulthood. But there is such a thing as going too far, NYA. What are you saying, mongrel? What I'm going to say is the main point. Listen carefully, NYA. Damicus, you have crossed the line. Since you plan to PK, this will save some time. Reining in children who stray too far beyond the line is also the obligation of elders. Come on, I will fight you one-on-one, NYA. Although it is rare for the chief to taunt someone, it can't be helped since Brigandia is acting like criminals. Shiro checked the numbers of enemies using the menu in his head as he thought. Ha, ridiculous, why should I fight you on your terms? Don't you see my 10 buddies over here? Sorry to interrupt Demika-san, but it doesn't have to be you. Instead, I'd prefer you in the gray robes. Isn't that an artifact dropped from the fire lizard's cave? You seem stronger, so we would be okay with you instead of the monk. It would be more satisfying for both of us if the strongest fighters settle things. Let's challenge this mage chief Nyana. You heard of me, Londark of Grey Steel, and still dare to say this? You were right, NYA. Let us finish this, NYA. Deviating from the plan surprised Sarah, Shiro had already switched his target to the male mage besides Demika's. Nyana seemed to support this, which made the Brigandia members confused. Some of them looked at the mage Londark, others watched Demika's for his reaction. Even Shiro's party could see the divide between the two groups. They are not united. That is expected since they are a coalition formed on the spur of the moment. The mage Londark is the number 2 man in the guild and Demika's tactician. Demika's, I understand how much control you have over your members. Shiro felt a flame flickering under his calm emotions. Shiro was not adept at dealing with others. You could say he hated mingling with idiots, but it didn't mean he couldn't do it. He was a pacifist towards other players and did not wish to fight them. But that doesn't mean he wouldn't. It was the opposite. Shiro knew what was coming next. His emotions were like the sea in a dark night, an urge to destroy fueled by his frustration. Eat a hearty meal. That's how Nyanta described it, keeping him warm and sunny, and then replacing it with a cold grin that revealed his cat fangs. Shiro had a similar fang in his heart. If you had the guts to wield a sword, you had to bear the resolve to die by a sword. Shiro agreed to this concept subconsciously. There was no need for mercy. Londark-san of Grey Steel, right? You are strong enough to have a nickname, so we would prefer to fight you instead of Demika-san. The swashbuckler chief Nyana here will be your opponent. Let's duke this out, we won't run away. Let's begin. Judging from your equipment, you are a top-class mage, NYA. Deciding things with a match should be your style, NYA. We can ignore the cowardly meatball Demika's here who is too scared to fight himself. Nyata's insult was the last straw. Demika's, infuriated by this, walked towards Nyana with anger, tension, and a sneer. Very well, I will fight you. A reckless bastard like you, I will use my fist and send you to heaven. Demika's pretended to walk up and take up the challenge casually when he lunged at Nyana. Nyana waited until the last moment before dodging the fist coming at his face, leaping several meters backwards. He drew his twin rapiers with a stance and laughed mockingly at Demika's. Well, what a strong punch, NYA. But the hit didn't land, so there is no damage, right? That aside, are you fine without your members' support? Demi-something-san. Shiro shouted mockingly as Demika's punched twice more. Demika seemed more infuriated and yelled, You're next, after I slaughter this old cat. Now, you need to get past me first, NYA. I don't want to show the lady unnecessary gory scenes. If you want me to go easy, tell me quickly, NYA. Outrageous. Demika's next move ignored the distance Nyana agilely put between them. His stance akin to throwing shot puts, he threw out consecutive left jabs. Nyanta parried most of them with his rapiers, but several punches still landed with a thud. In terms of HP, Demika's had 50% more than Nyana. Even if Nyana dodged most of Demika's attacks, the minority that connected were enough to drain his HP. How's that? Demika's approached with a joyous grin. Demika's belonged to the monk class. Monks were one of the 3 warrior classes, in the same vein as guardians and samurai. Warriors specialized in tanking on the front line with emphasis on their defense. From this perspective, monks who could only wear light armor, were in a league of their own. In Elder Tales, sword techniques and magic spells were known collectively as skills, each with a unique name and effect. They also had a set mana cost, casting time and cooldown time. Casting time was the period between selecting the skill and the skill being used, also known as gathering mana. Cooldown time was the time you need to wait before recasting the same skill again. You could take other actions during this cooldown period, except the spell you just cast. Most powerful spells could not be used in rapid succession. Take Samurai for instance, all of their skills had long cooldown times reflecting their battle style of dealing heavy hits. In comparison, monks had low cooldown times. Lightning Straight and Wyvern Kick were good examples. Monks were proficient in using basic efficient skills consecutively, chaining their attacks and leaving no time for rest. In terms of defense, monks were the weakest with their light armor, but it also gave them the highest evasion. Just like guardians with their defensive shield techniques, monks possessed skills which boosted their evasion rate. Examples were Phantom Step that left after images and Dragon Scale Stance that increased defense against fire and ice attacks. The defense of monks did not come from their equipment, but the evasion abilities of their bodies. Being powerful enough to fight on the front lines without having rare, strong equipment gave monks a reputation of being an easy-to-master class. How's this? Can't even fight back, huh? Nyana finally fended off Demika's attack, taking 2 steps back. But the dark green light of Demika's covered this distance with his flying kick. He followed up with a multitude of attacks even though Nyana avoided the kick. That was Demika's Wyvern Kick, a skill that damaged all enemies in a straight line. Demika's used it as a means to move. He utilized this suppressive and high-speed movement to stick close to Nyana, disrupting Nyata's ideal striking distance. He's good, not allowing Chief Nyana to create any distance. Shiro was secretly impressed. The Brigandia that was full of internal strife was now standing united. From the looks of things, these ruffians were expecting their guild master to win flawlessly. After dodging a left hook, Nyana kneed Demika's flank gently, jumping into the air with the limited space he created and went on the offensive. Nian. The strike that seemed to rip the air apart tore through Demika's thigh guard, leaving a wound akin to an ice pick. Nyana assumed a new defensive stance as he looked at Demika's coldly, the tips of his rapiers dancing like a sparrow. Nyana was a swashbuckler, a rare type of melee fighter that dual wields. Their special feature was their fast consecutive attacks using weapons in both hands as well as wide area spin attacks. In the classes that focused on physical attack power, their strike could not match those of assassins, but they made up for it with multiple hits. They specialized in hitting fast. Swashbucklers with different weapons had different fighting styles. Nyata's style was twin rapiers, which was second in attack speed only to twin daggers, which were the king of speed. Another feature of swashbucklers were the bad statuses they could inflict on others. Lowering attack speed, evasion rate or defense were examples of how swashbucklers could negate your strength and worsen your weakness with precision. I can see your hairy legs, Nya. Nyata's mocking words made Demika's face turn black and red, but Nyanta didn't give up the initiative. Nyata's rapiers pierced through Demika's limbs accurately, making a crisp sound like a typewriter. The 4 wounds on Demika's arms were Viper Strack, lowering his accuracy for dozens of seconds by slashing his arms. The 3 hits on Demika's legs were bloody piercing, hurting the agility of the legs and lowering evasion. Nyana used his surgeon-like observation skill and his iron will to carry out his plan of stripping Demika's fighting strength. This Nyanta was not the warm and steadfast sage that offered consultation for those in need. Wah! Stop jumping around, you bastard, and fight me fair and square. Coming from you, fair and square, sounds like a bastardization of our fair language. Judging from HP, Demika's had the advantage with Nyanta down to 30% of his hit points. Demika's as the tanking warrior class still had twice Nyata's HP. But in the eyes of all those present, the tall and slender swashbuckler was the one in control of the fight. Piercing strike, parrying and feints. The blade that was thinner than a finger drew silver lines in the air, forming a wall that blocked Demikos out. Demikos no longer had the attack power and speed he had at the start of the fight. His HP and MP drained away with the blood bleeding from his limbs. The Brigantia members who had felt at ease with Demikos winning were starting to get rowdy. They were filled with the fear of their leader losing, as well as curiosity and a secret happiness at Demikos failing. Demikos must have adopted the same strong-arm method in ruling his guild. Some of the members bore the hope that Demikos would be defeated in front of the crowd. Shiro, who sensed this atmosphere, gave Sarah a signal. Sarah, who was clenching her fists so tight the nails were biting into her palms, watched Niata's battle carefully. She regained awareness of her surroundings when Shiro tapped her shoulder. Sarah heard the instructions: when I give the signal, cast a healing pulse on everyone. As the healer of the party, restoring Niata's HP with spells was only natural. Why was there a need to wait for a command? And why was it party-wide healing spells, not just for Nyanta? Sarah stared with her eyes wide open as she asked herself. As she was about to ask Shiro, Sarah heard these unbelievable words. "Fuck this. Who wants to play this one-on-one game with you? Healers, restore the wounds on my limbs. Assassin team, surround and butcher this cat bastard." Demikos, unable to take the attacks of the swordsman facing him anymore, commanded Brigantia to attack. This angry roar stopped everyone's movement for a moment. Even though Brigantia engaged in NPC slave trades, intimidated other players, piqued people, and took other nasty actions, this order still made them hesitate for a moment. Brigantia was a lawless organization, but truly lawless individuals wouldn't have been able to gather in a group. Forming a group without any guiding principles would have been meaningless. Lawless people still obeyed the reign of the powerful and violent. The band of outlaws, Brigantia, was managed through the use of strength. As the head of the group, Demikos had been wounded all over by the rapier he'd laughed off as a girl's weapon in this one-on-one fight. The attack power he was so proud of had been sealed away as he stood on the verge of defeat. And when faced with the fact of being wounded, he had barked angrily for aid to destroy the enemy. Is it really fine to listen to this order? We will be losers in life if we continue to follow this kind of leader. Even though they were a lawless bunch, Brigantia's members still harbored such thoughts and hesitated. It would be lucky if we could make them uneasy, hesitate, and doubt each other with this. But they only hesitated for a moment. Even though their leader was in a pitiful state, they still need to keep up their reputation as a violent organization. No, their brand name was doubly important because they were a lawless group. They were able to oppress other players because of Brigantia's reputation of being a powerful and violent group. They had to keep up the reign of terror, or else they would be the ones who were hunted. Their feelings were more about the fear of losing their status as the ones inflicting terror rather than their desire to save their leader. All the members decided to seal the mouths of these three people. It took them 3 seconds to come to a consensus. After making this decision, the lawless bunch roared as they swarmed towards Nyana. But no one in Shiro's group wasted these 3 seconds. Neotsugu appeared like the wind, intercepting the 8 members rushing Nyana. The Brigantia group's morale did not falter with the appearance of the new enemy as they rushed in with renewed maliciousness. Anchor howl. Neotsugu howled. This was a skill that forced the enemies in the surrounding area to focus solely on him. This was the ability of Guardians, the fortresses of the front line. The 8 Brigantia members stopped in front of Neotsugu as though their feet were nailed to the ground. Nyana-san, if that is the case, heal everyone now. 8 right, heartbeat healing. Sarah used the best skill available to her upon hearing Shiro's command. Heartbeat healing was a skill unique to druids. Similar to the Kanagi with damage intercept and clerics with auto heal, druids also had their own special skills. Spells in the same vein as heartbeat healing were persistent restorative magics which remained in effect for a short time. A set amount of HP would be healed over a 10-30-second period. Although the amount healed each pulse was less than that of a normal healing spell, the total HP restored was much higher, which made it an MP-efficient magic. Furthermore, it also allowed the caster to do other things such as attacking or defending while the healing over time was in effect. But I can't keep this up, my level isn't high enough. Sarah cried in pain. In Elder Tales, the strength of the healers would drastically affect the outcome of battles. A well-trained healer partnered with a tank could withstand the attacks of 4 other players around the same level. Sarah was level 19. Even with the excellent defense of the level 90 Neotsugu, it was impossible from the start to fend off the attacks of 8 high-level Brigandia members. Don't worry about our guardian, focus on healing Yana. Calm down and watch our allies' HP. If you can't do something, then don't. Focus on doing what you can, Shiro said calmly to Sarah, who was losing her nerve. His strong words whipped up the strength within Sarah. Shiro told her that what healers could do was heal. In the battlefield not far from Neotsugu, Yana and Demika's battle was reaching its climax. The wounds on Demika's arms had recovered with the aid of his healers, restoring his original attack strength. The wounds on his leg remained, but Demika's was focusing on attacking and had given up on dodging, regaining his composure. In the end, the warrior-class Demika's was tougher than melee swashbucklers. With the support of healers, it would become a battle of attrition and he could gain victory through brute force. That was Demika's wishful plan. Although the little girl druid was healing the swordsman before him, her restorative power would not exceed his damage output. Demika's, who was sure of victory, assumed an arrogant attitude. What's this? What can you do with your toy swords? How can a weak fellow like you protect your allies? How rude. Rapiers are the weapons of gentlemen NYA. I'll shut your cocky mouth up. Look, your warrior friend is about to go down. That might not be so NYA. As they traded sword strikes and fist blows, the flashing silver shadows and the sound of body blows increased as their fight intensified. In the other dusty battlefield, Neotsugu was in a pinch. Under the simultaneous attacks of 8 foes, Neotsugu only had 2,400 HP left. But he remained calm, parrying Brigandia's blows with his shield as he maintained his party's formation. Remaining composed in chaotic situations was a mark of an excellent vanguard. Naosugu's experienced movements looked doubly impressive in Sarah's eyes. Ready the spell. She heard Shiro's soft words. Sarah answered a few pitches higher than normal as she listened to her racing pulse. Right. It's almost time, Shiro. Castle of Stone. Neotsugu held the shield close with a shout, taking a wide, steady stance. His shield, armor, and sword shone like ancient granite marble, giving off magic and fighting aura. What is this? Just a bit more. Finish him off. Take this. Assassinate. One of these 8 members, who seemed to be an assassin, used a hard-hitting skill on Neotsugu. The assassin's sword swung towards Naosugu's armor with a sound that seemed to burn through the air. This strike was definitely a fatal blow. But the attack ended with a loud clank blocked by Naosugu's shield. Castle of Stone. This was one of the strong defense skills available exclusively to Guardians. In its short 10-second span, this emergency skill could negate all damage. Neotsugu, who turned into a fortress of marble, used his invincible shield to protect the defense line. Told you so NYA, Neotsugu CCH, I won't fall so easily. Now Sarah, cast all your healing spells on Neotsugu. Sarah sprang up and took a step forward, raising her hand to the sky. She chanted Healing Wind, a single-target healing pulse spell. She was already using the party-wide spell Heartbeat Healing, and she was now stacking Healing Wind on top of that. But Sarah didn't stop with this. After casting 2 heal over time spells, she continued to chant instant healing magic, wielding her level 19 ability to the limit and sending all the healing she had to the front line. This was the only thing she could do as a healer. WuxiaWorldAudio.com While her allies protected her in the front, she would protect them with her healing spells from the back. Sarah remembered the voice of her guild master of the memorable sound of that cleric. The real advantage of healing over time spells was that as they were spells that remained in effect, you could use the spare time to cast multiple healing magics. A druid who put everything into her healing had unimaginable potential, the instant healing ability overwhelming the other two healing class. It was powerful even at level 19. Naosuku's HP, which was now less than 20%, was recovering gradually under Sarah's multiple healing spells. Buying time won't save you. On the other hand, Demikos had gotten more furious as he attacked Nyana. Castle of Stone was indeed a powerful defense skill, making a monk like Demikos from the warrior class green with envy. But it still had a weak point. The con to using it was the long cooldown time. This invincible ultimate skill could only be used once every 10 minutes. 10 minutes was more than enough to kill these critters 20 times. If he was using a skill he couldn't use again for another 10 minutes, it meant he was out of options to handle the attacks of the 8 members. In the 600 seconds of the 10-minute cooldown, he could only negate all physical damage for 10 seconds. From this perspective, Castle of Stone was not an ultimate skill, but a desperate move. The time when Castle of Stone wore off meant the end of these guys. This victorious moment in the future had already flashed across Demikos' mind. Demikos' fierce attacks were pushing Nyana to the brink. Sarah, who was watching her allies' conditions using the status screen, was regretting her lack of power. The Guardian, who was fighting the 8 members of Brigantia in the front, and Nyana, who had been caring for her kindly all this time, were both covered in wounds. She couldn't save them even after giving her all. The MP that was supporting her healing was gradually decreasing. Think it's about time, Shirokai Nya. Here we go, Chief Nyana. But ignoring Sarah's desperation, Shiro and Nyana chatted in high spirits. Nyana moved like a leaf dancing in the wind to Demikos. Although he was surprised, Demikos still kicked upwards in a wide arc, attempting to sweep the slender man in front of him away. But Nyana used his raised knee as a platform to leap into the air. Silver flashed brightly. The rapiers in Nyana's hand shredded the air, striking like lightning. 3, 4, 5 hits. Sarah could only count so many. Nyana's rapier split into countless copies, piercing the azure vines that had bound Demikos without her noticing. Swashbucklers had the fastest attacking speed out of the 12 classes. And not only was Nyana's attack power improved through Shiro's enhancement magic, but Nyana also triggered the trap spell Thornbind Hostage on his opponent. Nyana's slashes. Shiro's Thornbind Hostage. The combination attack of the two repeated 10 times in 2 seconds. Every time Nyana struck, the spell would activate like an exploding lightning ball, giving out flashes and shockwaves. Just like a bullet imploding in the confined space of a cartridge, compression increased damage power. Demikos looked like he was swarmed by attacks from invisible men around him, staggering from the impact and dying before he could even scream. No way. The guild master is. Everyone present received a psychological blow. A level 90 warrior, supported fully by healers, had died in an instant. The more experience you had in Elder Tales, the more you would fall into doubt and despair from this scene. Nyana-san. Sarah's gentle voice was also expressing this point. She couldn't catch up with the battle that had happened in front of her. Put away your swords. Naotsugu shouted, making the Brigantia members look at each other. The scream from behind them made them turn pale. Looking towards the source, they saw their healers on the ground. The number 2 man of the guild, Londark in grey robes, was kneeling on the ground with one arm missing. The black-haired young girl who used the vacant 3 seconds to the limit, who looked like a lovely flower, was pressing her blade to Londark's neck. Akatsuki, who saw the same scene play out as Sarah, had a rough idea what had happened. Adventurers had great physical attributes. Not only muscle strength and agility, but their dynamic vision was also better than in the real world. Although Akatsuki had practiced kendo since she was a child, she felt that it would be impossible to see that kind of sword speed in real life. Even now, she only caught about half of what had happened. In fact, she was struggling to comprehend what she saw and was trying to deduce what had happened. Akatsuki belonged to the assassin class, which had the highest attack power among the weapon-based classes. Even her strongest skill, however, was not strong enough to kill a level 90 warrior class. Akatsuki had wiped out the healers who were supporting Demikaz, so he wasn't able to regain any of his HP. Even taking that into account, it was still unthinkable for a player to defeat a warrior class character that quickly. In Elder Tales, battles were long drawn-out affairs, especially those between players. Sure, kill attacks were just a figure of speech in this world, as these instances were very rare. No matter how strong a player was, if their opponents were about the same level, it would inevitably take dozens of rounds to settle a fight. If both of them were supported by healers, the fight could drag on indefinitely without a clear victor. The more experience you had with Elder Tales, the deeper your understanding of this fact. It became common sense. However, Nyana had dished out an unbelievable amount of damage. The secret lay within the glowing azure vines. Shiro's Thornbind Hostage was a trap spell unique to enchanters. It bound an opponent with 5 vines and caused 1,000 points of additional damage per vine when destroyed by an ally. The damage was only 5,000 if all the thorns were activated, which was only a third of Demikaz's HP. Even adding in the damage from Nyata's attack, it would not have been enough to defeat Demikaz. The many training sessions had made Akatsuki familiar with the spells Shiro commonly used. Since Thornbind Hostage was one of Shiro's best spells, Akatsuki could identify its use by looking at the visual effects. The cooldown time for Thornbind Hostage was 15 seconds. Although it was just a deduction, Nyana had stopped his attack for 14 seconds after Shiro set this trap spell. After luring Demikaz into taking the offensive and enduring his attacks for those 14 seconds, Nyana made sure he had a good position to strike as he calculated the time to attack. When the time was right, Nyana had leapt into the air and struck 5 times with the rapier in his left hand. These 5 hits had pierced the vines, triggering the additional damage. At that exact moment, Shiro, whose cooldown time ended, had recast Thornbind Hostage on Demikaz. Nyata, who was still in mid-air, then turned around and slashed another 5 times with the rapier in his right hand. The result, a chain attack with a total of 10 hits. Understanding the cooldown time on Shiro's spell and checking the 2 Thornbind Hostage spells, 10 hits activated all 10 vines. This was the truth behind the battle that Akatsuki saw. Akatsuki could only tell this, however, because she knew the features of this spell throughout her repeated practices with Shiro. The attack skill of the swashbuckler in mid-air had no gaps. Hitting 10 times in 2 seconds is a unique ability to this class. 10 strikes in 2 seconds, meaning 1 strike every 0.2 seconds. They had used a small gap between the 5th and 6th strike to cast the second set of Thornbind Hostage vines. It was almost humanly impossible. It could be classified as an ultimate tag team move. If they could dish out this kind of attack, it could be possible to deplete the HP of a warrior class in an instant. But could something like this be done so easily? If anyone asked that question, the answer would definitely be no. Akatsuki, who was biting her lip unconsciously, hurriedly resumed her normal, serious expression. The battle was not over yet. She felt the truth that was unfolding before her was in conflict with the common sense in her heart. Even she, who had trained dozens of days with Shiro, could not achieve this feat. Such an impressive attack came from 2 players who hadn't met for ages without coordinating in advance. The mental blow to the members of Bridge India was several times more severe than it was to Akatsuki. Just who are these people? Where did the power that defeated Demikaz come from? Are they over level 90? Could they be an elite team from another zone? The attack that had taken Akatsuki some time to grasp was almost impossible for others to understand at a glance. They couldn't even begin to comprehend it. When, how, Demikos, who ruled the guild with an iron fist, the tactician, Londark, who had stayed in Brigandia despite his personality clashing with Demikos, the bandits, who lost their two leaders, still had much of their fighting strength left, but the psychological impact was strong enough to stop them from attacking. "We came through deep in Palm," Shiro stated, as he walked towards Londark. "Akiba and the city are no longer so far apart as to prevent travel between them. We've obtained the maps and the means and have reported back. You are finished causing this kind of trouble." The truth, however, was not so optimistic. Akatsuki's group came here with the aid of the Griffins. Not all players could travel with the same speed. If you wanted to visit the Ezo Empire, it would still be a long and tedious journey. However, in order to plant a feeling of defeat deeply in the bandits, Shiro announced this as if it were a fact. Akatsuki dug her blade gently into Londark's throat to emphasize Shiro's words. "We've won this battle. For the Remang head, let's call it a draw." Shiro drew a dagger from within his cloak and cut off Demiko's head. The sword made a wet sound as it cut through bones and sinew. Akatsuki saw Shiro's expression dim. This was expected. Even if death was not permanent in Elder Tales, Shiro did not want to decapitate anyone. However, he maintained his cruel tone. There was no telling how great a deterrent decapitation was in this world without death, but Akatsuki felt this was the price that Brigandia must pay for their crimes. Since the members of Brigandia were using their lives as chips in this bet, it was only normal to forfeit that which they bet if they lost. Shiro's cruel demeanor and his wicked gaze made the Brigandia members back away slowly. The scream of a griffin tore through the icy silence. The three griffins that came from the western skies assumed a triangle formation, landing violently before Shiro's team. "Sara-san, come Harania." Nyanta, who already sheathed his rapiers, extended his hand to Sarah and guided her over to his griffin. He picked her up, cradling her in his arms, and jumped onto the griffin. Neotsugu motioned for the others to mount their griffins as he took a step forward to protect Akatsuki. Akatsuki swung her blade to clear away the blood while Shiro stood in front of her. As usual, Shiro looked at her with unapproachable but caring eyes. "Let's go, Akatsuki." That's why Akatsuki nodded in response. Like always, her response conferred gratitude and respect that she didn't need to express in words. "Time to take off. We are getting out of here." Escape festival. Neotsugu yelled, the phrase used by cavalry strike forces, as he took to the sky. The light brown griffin Nyanta mounted took off soon after with a mighty leap. Akatsuki brushed aside Shiro's hand lightly and jumped onto the griffin. She could leap onto the griffin with the strengthened body of an adventurer without needing Shiro's help. This was Shiro's mount, however, so it would be rude to jump on without saying anything. But it would be too formal to seek permission, so Akatsuki used Shiro's fingertips as a guide and leapt up behind him. Shiro stared down the Brigandia members till the very end. He gave up on them with a sigh and turned to Akatsuki and said, "Let's go." Akatsuki acknowledged this with a nod. Shiro signaled the griffin with his heels, and the griffin climbed up an invisible staircase in the wind under the gaze of the Brigandia members and adventurers outside Tsukino. And thus the three majestic creatures left whirlwinds behind and took to the sky. The pain Akatsuki felt in witnessing Shiro and Nyata's combo attack, as well as the frustration she sensed in the city zone of Tsukino, were shred to pieces by the wind that blew over the griffin. The quest to save the Crescent Moon Alliance member, the young girl Sarah, had been completed perfectly. Although it would be another week before they reached Akiba, this was still an amazing result. The howling wind was unable to disrupt Akatsuki's peaceful state of mind. She was quiet and satisfied at the completion of a mission and grabbed at Shiro's back gently. "My lord." "What is it, Akatsuki?" "Nothing." "I see. Let's go home, to Akiba." Yeah, leaving the words that would be carried off by the wind once they were uttered. The blue skies tore the scenery surrounding Akatsuki to pieces. The three griffins were like larks that had escaped from the cage binding them, spreading their wings and flying to the southern skies. End chapter.